Welcome to Beyond Money Podcast, your source for cutting-edge ideas about how to pay and be paid without using money or banks. We talk about the dysfunctions of conventional structures of money and banking, and we discuss alternate ideas about and solutions to the money problem. Listen to these interviews and escape conventional thinking about money. Hello again, and welcome to Beyond Money Podcast, where we discuss innovative approaches to money, credit, exchange, and finance with people who think and act outside the box of conventional money and banking. In this series of interviews, we look into the theory, history, and practice of exchange and finance, both mainstream and its alternatives. This is Ken Freeman sitting down with Thomas Greco, and today we'll be speaking with Heloisa Primavera. She will be joining us via Skype from her home in Switzerland. She'll be talking to us about her experience throughout South America, where she's been an active and effective presence in various social money movements for more than 20 years. Heloisa Primavera is founder of the Latin American Network on Solidarity Socioeconomy and the Colibri Project, which offers training for agents of indigenous development. And since 1996, she has studied barter clubs, or clubes de trueque, and solidarity economy in Argentina and throughout Latin America. She is a professor at the School of Economics and at the School of Social Sciences at the University of Buenos Aires. Today we'll be talking about the conditions that led to the rise of the social money movement in Argentina, its eventual fall, and current efforts to rebuild it. This interview was recorded on February 23, 2019. Here is our interview with Thomas Greco and Heloisa Primavera.
Hello, Heloisa. Welcome. It's so nice to meet up with you again after all these years. I remember that we first met face-to-face in 2001 when you graciously invited me to participate in a conference on social money that you had organized in Chile outside of Santiago. And at that time, things were going very well in the social money movement. But I'm wondering if you could back up a little bit from that point and tell us how the social money movement arose in Argentina, you say in the mid-1990s, and what happened subsequent to that. Basically focusing on the conditions that were prevalent in the Argentine economy at the time, and also the grassroots activity that led to the emergence of the Red Global Trueque and the various trading clubs.
Yes. Well, I would say that the first aspect is that Argentina is not Mexico and Argentina is not Brazil. And maybe if it happened in Argentina and reached that enormous amount of transactions and diversity of currencies, it's because we were living a very special moment, political, economical moment of, financial capitalism or neoliberalism. Argentina was mainly a middle-class country. I mean, most of the population were accustomed to have vacations, go to the psychotherapy, and have, the consumption was very varied. And this did not happen in Brazil. When it happened in Brazil and in Mexico, and right now in Bolivia, people that they do not have so many needs as in Argentina people were used to. So when we had this enormous crisis in employment, in the 90s, Argentina had an enormous crisis in employment because it was a government of President Menem in which everything was privatized, and there was a lot of opening to the international economy, so small enterprise broke. So that's the real issue. What was happening in Argentina and why did it rise so much in Argentina and not anywhere else? Well, for me, this is a good context to understand it, I mean, it was a middle-class society suffering a lot for not being able not only to eat, because more of people that start with bartering, it's because they are on the basic needs. No, Argentina was not with basic needs. And I think this is very important because every time you want to transfer an experience to another place, you have to see the context. So when we tried to do the same in Brazil, it didn't work.
I recall that at the time, Argentina tried to follow the neoliberal agenda of privatization, and there was a policy of trying to keep parity of the peso with the dollar. I remember when I visited you in 2001 after the conference in Buenos Aires, the ATM machines were offering either pesos or dollars. People were indifferent because the peso and the dollar were at parity, 1 to 1.
That's it. That's exactly the context to which I referred before. There are some pictures. I think Peter North took them somewhere in Cordoba or Mendoza, where you can read, "We accept peso, dollars, or credits." That's where the currencies from the barter network. So, what does it mean? It means that the economy was completely open. Imports were absolutely free. To produce a sheet in Argentina was 10 times more expensive than a Chinese one. So people were really small and medium enterprises were absolutely going down. Yes.
Yeah.
And this what explains why you could find so many articles in those markets. In those markets, I think you remember, you could find anything. We just were very careful. I mean, we in general, we can talk about this later, but we were very careful in order not to accept, for instance, how do you call the CD players, car CD players, because they were stolen, robbery was. So we were very, very careful towards this, and we tried to keep groups small enough so that we could meet everyone face to face.
You're talking about the trueque club markets.
Yes.
Can you give us a little background on how the first trueque market arose? These were markets where pesos were not used, but the local clubs issued their own currency or credito notes. Can you give us some background on that?
Yes. Well, let's go further. Let's go first to the very idea. How did the idea of having a closed market arrived? By that time, I mean, by the 90s in Argentina, we had lots of enterprises, of multinationals enterprise going on with what we call multi-level marketing. Do you understand this is? Like Amway and many. Okay, so some guys that had been very close linked to this enterprise thought, why couldn't we do this, but with a national group instead of sending our, benefits to multinationals? So the first idea was a sort of multi-market level. And then they would say, why should we not do this without money so that we could just exchange among us what people produced and could not consume because it was an accident, and vice versa. I mean, if I am a psychotherapist, I'm a psychologist, and I cannot make more than 10 sessions a day, but I still don't have enough clients. If I put this service into a market in which people cannot pay me with money because they don't have money, but they can pay me with bread or food or medicines or whatever. So we could do this work in a very small multi-level marketing system like the other one. So it was a design that was conceived by people that were tied to, first of all, ecology, permaculture, and multi-level marketing. And this was never touched in any research. Nobody cared ever about this. You're going to find many, master's degree, PhDs, etc. But they just go there and see this small world of what happened in this small universe. So I think that this is very important. The three aspects I mentioned to you. I mean, economy was open. People were, small and medium enterprise were in a very hard situation. They could not sell their products because imports from China were much cheaper. Employment was, of course, because of this, in a big crisis. And besides this, we had money and a dollar and peso argentino with a system that was what we call the convertibility process. Okay, so this is the real context that did not happen in Mexico, either in Brazil or in Bolivia or anywhere else. For me, the important aspect of this process was that we were not in the basic, grassroots economy. We were in the middle class economy. Mm-hmm. And this gave us a variety that no other group could have. And that's why when we tried to grow to a national level, it was important to keep a certain flexibility that was very difficult. I am not sure that you have ever been to a national meeting, because regions, I mean, every club, every node was organized with a direct democracy. Then the region was organized with direct democracy, vote, etc. And then the national level pretended to do this, but it was very difficult. So if you ask why did it collapse because when the people responsible for the global barter network, not solidarity barter network, started selling the papers every week, inflation, bad called inflation, was unavoidable. Why? Because people went there and bought, let's say, 10 creditors or 20 creditors or 50 creditors for 2 pesos or $2, but they spent it in the notes as 50, not as 2. So who was the damage? The producer, people that were selling their articles. And this is, for me, the only good explanation of the crisis. Why did it fail? It explodes because someone that produced, let's say, peaches could not sell his whole crop of peaches and take these papers, go to Buenos Aires and just buy 2 liters of olive oil,
So what you're describing is improper issuance of the credito currency.
Yeah.
And those that were in control of the issuance basically profited off of it by selling them for pesos or allocating to themselves large amounts of the credito currency notes without proper reciprocation, that is, not willing to accept them back for real value in goods and services.
Yes, there is. And that's why later on they took the opportunity, as Margaret Kennedy was there by that time, and she was invited by this founder group to be present in the launching of a project. When I met her, I explained her this process, that they were just issuing as many as they thought they could issue to turn out the markets, but they had no production behind it. Then she didn't do it. I remember she was very upset about it, because she had met them in Europe and they had told them that it worked like this, because the very beginning was perfect, because it was 1-to-1, to have $20 or 20 pesos or 20 creditors in this, in the network. You had to engage yourself to introduce at least 20 in the first or second time you went there, and then it started moving. The first thing I myself noticed, because you have to take into account that I am molecular biologist turned into sociologist, anthropologist, and my economy training started there in the market trueque. That's when, in the 90s, I started studying economy. And why did I start it? Because I thought it was not an economic issue. It was something much more complex. But there's a part that is very simple. We could not work in a market in which the bills were from 1, 2, 5, 10, and 20, because 20 was the amount as mutual credit distributed to everyone. So if this was the rules of the game, there was no reason for people to issue a 50 credits bill. And I found 50 credits running. Then I said, well, why do we need 50 credit bills if our maximum is this? Oh, because sometimes some producers have a lot of production and then it's easier. Yes, but if he sells, he has to buy, because this was the basic rule, making the equalization of what you sell, you buy. If you don't buy, you're producing accumulation of papers. And this was not the idea.
You're talking about reciprocity. If you buy, you also have to sell.
If you buy, you have also to sell. So that's why.
Let's back up a moment. In the beginning, there were individual local trading clubs or trueque clubs, nodes as you call them. Later on, there was an attempt to network these nodes together. But each node, each club was issuing their own credito notes, their own currency, correct?
No. In the very beginning, I would say the first year, this is about 96, nodes were individual. So individual, and then every node had its own bill. But when we organized by 97, the regions, we had an agreement to use every node in a region would use the same and would be submitted to the same accountability. And this was the reason why it was so important for us to have a monthly meeting for the node, a monthly meeting for the region, and a monthly meeting for the national network. Because it was like this that we intended to make the growth of the network should have been done in this with this aspect. Every time a single group went to a meeting, they should take a monthly report of how many operations there have been the month before. So when we were small nodes and very little amount of nodes, that was easy. But when we have already regions, we had a system of cross accounting. Let's say group A took care of group B, but group B did not take care of group A accounts, but to group C, and then group C to group D, etc.
Are you talking about an audit trail?
An audit trail, so that as there was not any, by the time advanced, we had to tape in our computers. We took our laptops there and just wrote down how many people and what did they buy and how much it turned, etc. And at the very beginning, just by 97, I proposed that this $20 or 20 credits could enhance to 50, because I saw there was what we call lack of liquidity. I don't know if there's the same English word for this, illiquidity.
Lack of liquidity, yes. I would like to back up a minute and mention something that I observed in 2001 when we visited you in Buenos Aires. We visited a number of trading events that were organized by various nodes or trueque clubs. And I remember one place that we went to, it was a converted warehouse where there must have been 300 or 400 people buying and selling, all using various kinds of credito notes. And there were many different credito note varieties. And there was also a publication that indicated which credito notes were acceptable and which were not.
Exactly. That's why. By that time, we knew that there were many independent, autonomous groups using their own currencies, as they were not members of the global network. Let's say they were not necessarily accepted, but their members could go with production. I mean, they could not trade with their bills, but they could take production. Let's see, peaches or clothes or whatever. Is it clear?
You mean they could use their credito notes to buy things?
No, I mean, if they belong to the, let's say, the group, the forbidden group, they could not. But if they use the notes that were accepted by the assembly, let's say by the national or regional assembly, they could use their bills.
So they had to sell something in order to get those notes.
Yes, but by that time, we didn't still know that there was a campaign of kind of some groups of selling paper. I mean, selling the bills. When we knew that this was happening, we interdicted this operation in our notes, and we had many problems, violence problems, where we were threatened because we couldn't do that, etc. But by that time, I don't know if you were there in a meeting in our group when a lady talked. I know this because I have the tape. It was taped for a Japanese television company. And she said, well, I buy here because it's cheap, and I sell in our region because I sell it much more expensive. She said this in a very natural and naive way that, of course, this was the very moment in which we decided not to accept anymore bills from the small tree, remember, from the global network. I said, okay, though, if you're a member of those nodes, you can come, but you come with production. We don't accept your bills. In the beginning, we didn't accept the 50 credits bill, then 20, because we knew they were being counterfeited and sold out, So, but it was already a war. And remember that by December of 2001, Argentina exploded.
That's when the peso was devalued by 2/3.
Yes. And why did the network collapsed if it had nothing to do with the government? Well, it had nothing to do with the government, but it had to do with the governance. I mean, it depends on the way the creditors were being issued. I mean, if in one group 1 kilo of wheat or sugar was one creditor, and in another one it was 2,000, of course, it was not possible to work together. And this was the real reason. It was not inflation, it was seigniorage. And they tried to call this demurrage. They tried to say, well, we are going to make a demurrage. So if you have old creditors, just come here and we'll change 1,000 creditors for 100, but it's more valuable. And it didn't work, of course.
You said previously that, when we went back to Argentina in 2003, the network had already collapsed, I think the summer before, 2002. It seems...
It depended on the region and in the organization. For instance, Sampaio's group that you met, that in the west of Buenos Aires province, resisted much more because they decided just to use the Sampaio's nodes. That was called VHS.
So they basically withdrew from the network and became a local node independent of the network. So is that still in operation?
Yes, but they are not networked to anyone. I mean, every existing node operating currently with the old system of currencies are operating alone.
So they're independent.
And they are. It's very difficult to estimate how much people. Some 5-6 years ago, a group from France tried to make some statistics, and they came to a conclusion of about 50,000 people in a whole country. But it's not necessarily so. I mean, it could be more, it could be less. As a matter of fact, currently, barter is back in very different ways. You can find groups of barter in Facebook in which people offer direct barter. And we launched in 2011 and 12 a new currency in a school system, because I was teaching in a secondary school with a project of IDRC, the Canadian International Technical Corporation. They financed us a project in order to see how we could introduce the laptops in a public school, and I was teaching economy myself. So I introduced a new currency called the blue, el azul, because of the blue economy of Gunter Pauli that I imagine you know. So I thought it was a very interesting project for the guys by that time.
For one school or for a whole school district, or how extensive?
No. The beginning was for one school with the intention of extending this to the whole Buenos Aires town, but it didn't work because the political responsible for the project moved to another area. And then we went to another project. We went to create a lab in which to learn how to create social currencies and other things, and robots, etc. So this currency still exists and is working in some isolated groups in very poor quarters in Buenos Aires, in which we deal with abandoned children and adolescents in drug addiction. But it's not a big network. Right now, we launched 2 years ago is the beginning of the project, but the very first node launched in Buenos Aires in November 2018, a currency called Moneda Par, P-A-R, that means peer. It has nothing to do with the PAR group from the beginning of the trueque in the 90s. And when I went there to Argentina last year, they were always, in those kind of, we are going to start when we feel like this and that. And then I proposed them to merge the system we used in our nodes for training people to exchange in a sustainable way and use this wallet with PAR currency. And we did it in a week. I proposed this training. It's what we called a game of the 5 questions. I mean, the 5 questions are: who am I? What can I offer that I cannot offer because there's no money in the market to buy it? What I would need, and when have I been doing trade without money in my life? With these 5 questions, you can do this in a group of 30 persons, and all of a sudden you have a market, and the market is still working. Right now it works every 2 weeks, but there are at least a dozen of nodes working all over Argentina with the same method. And I just asked a week ago to people from my node. It is called node Buenos Aires node number 1. I asked, can you tell me how many exchanges are you doing out of the markets? No one. Amazing. No one. Do you know what it means? It means that people prefer to see face to face when they exchange with the system. It's very interesting because I was there for 3 weeks. First week I proposed the game. Second week we did it. Third week they did it alone, and then I am here, and And then other people that were there in this node took this initiative to some places in Great Buenos Aires, I mean Moreno, Luján, and where market, I mean people seeing each other are essential, are not only, you're not part of a list of products.
So what you're telling us is that the kinds of markets, the kinds of market events that I saw when we visited in 2001 and again in 2003, these are pretty much a thing of the past.
No, but the difference is that right now there's no more paper bills except in those groups I told you that are working with vulnerable groups. But
So are there electronic currencies now that serve the purpose?
right now, I mean, bill money,
Paper money, yeah.
with bill support are working in very small groups and as very small specific social function groups. Mm-hmm. But even those people are already getting interested in having their wallet with a par currency that is mutual credit working in the same basis that the previous trueque worked. I mean, we have about $10 is the amount when you engage yourself in running a node, I mean a group to exchange without money, you receive this $10.
So that's the line of credit that everybody gets.
Yes, it's not, you don't receive, even you have in your wallet the equivalent of $10 to start trading.
This is an electronic wallet on your phone or your computer?
Yes, you can put it in your computer. I can give you the website and you can just see how it works.
Okay, yeah, that would be good. We'd like to see that.
Sure. I have it here, but in another, because they are not yet in iPhone, and okay. I have in an Android system, but it's going soon to be done. So right now they are trying to promote this system in many places, especially places that know me and were my students in Latin America. And of course, the place in which the experience was most succeeded was in Brazil, because we had the support of national government.
Tell us more about that.
This is Banco Palmas. The first currency, Palmas, was printed in Mendoza, so you can see the roots of the history. You knew one of those bills. Maybe you have one of those bills called Eco Vale. Remember this?
Yes, I do. Uh-huh.
They had sort of a optic barcode, etc. So when I went to Brazil, financed by an organization from the Netherlands called Strohalm.
Yeah.
Henk van Arkel, we published a book called Where is Money in 2001. And in 2002, he offered me to go to Banco Palmas to issue the first social currency in a popular bank. It was not a real bank. It was called Banco Palmas, but it was only an association of neighbors,
Yeah.
But they insist in calling them bank, because they say this is not what banks are, but what banks should be. So they insist calling themselves Banco Palmas, Banco Bain, and all those banks. They are more than 120 currently. So we went there. We launched a project called Fomento that was from Strohalm. It meant that we wished to show the neighbors that if they wanted to participate in the economy of their quarter, we could work together without money. And how did we prove this? We proved this constructing a building called Palmatec that exists still, and now it's a sort of hostel there, that costed $20,000 and we said, we are going to build it with $10,000 and your work, but not taking profit of your work, just exchanging with this bill. So the Palma currency was created to this project, and then it worked, and people was very interested in the system. And immediately it didn't grow up because it was necessary to improve the contact with the community. I mean, when you say community is not a geographic place, you know. They took another step, and in about 2004, 2005, they were already launching a real bank with the same papers, with the same pieces of paper printed in Mendoza, you know. Right now, they are working with a payment system called is money. That is, in Portuguese, when you pronounce it, it sounds like it is really money, you know. It is money. This e-money, when you say in Portuguese, it means é dinheiro. It means it's really money.
Let's get back to Argentina. I know you've been in Switzerland for the past 3 years, but I'm sure you still keep tabs on what's going on in Argentina. A lot has happened since 2003, both in the mainstream economy in Argentina and perhaps in the alternative economy and the social money movement. Can you just give us an overview of that?
Yes. Well, I would say if I compare what happened to social currencies with happened with alternative economies, even it has a name, it's another economy, you know, another economy is possible, developed much further, because there was an enormous success departing from universities and NGOs to develop SSE. SSE means social solidarity economy, you know. There are master degrees, many different kinds of trainings in social economy, but not, unfortunately, as I was not there the last 3-4 years, unfortunately, this could not be accompanied by social currencies. So 1 year ago, when people from Moneda Par contacted me, I was not in good conditions to, you know, to be very close to them. But in 2017 in Barcelona, we met in this international meeting called Social Currencies and Complementary and Social Currencies International Seminar. And there I met guys from the Moneda Par, and we started a close collaboration. And I'm right now, I would say, highly involved in their project, and I'm trying to help how to write down a chart that can be valid not only to poor economy, I mean, as a social solidarity economy addresses to, because I think that one of the important reasons for which barter networks reached 6 million people, it was because it was not addressed to only to very poor people, but it was addressed to anybody, you know.
Of course.
So I'm absolutely sure of this, you know. I mean, the success of barter networks had to do with being open, and a very lower middle class that was a majority in Argentina involved. And from this point of, and then it was easier to get downstairs and upstairs. You know?
What do you think, Heloisa, what do you think it will take to revive the social money movement to the level that it was at before the collapse in 2002?
I really think history does not repeat itself in exactly the same way, but I think we are in a good situation now because many people in Argentina do not like the results of current government. This is a disaster, you know. They have a very, very bad marketing campaign. They were not able to explain what they found when they arrived in the government. And they lost already the tempo, the timing of getting interested. But there are still many, many people that are happy with what the justice doing, with putting thieves into jail. And this is one aspect that is important. Why do I say this? Because I am quite convinced that it would be very difficult that the same government that was before this one, I mean the government that was during 10 years in Argentina, they are not coming back. Anyway, during this government, it was not possible to develop real ground grassroots economy, autonomous economy.
Was that government antagonistic to it?
The Kirchner were not interested in empowerment of population. They were interested in offering them sensation that public services were almost free, because this was the machine, the robbery machine in place. Need not people aware of how things were going. They need people depending on money they got from the government.
Yes.
This is quite sure. But right now, President Macri, unfortunately, wasn't able to improve a little bit economy, formal economy. So the situation is very, very difficult, but people still recognize the value of the moral issues of this government. So if Macri or another political force that is not Macri, but is not the Kirchner, comes to government next year, I think we have a good opportunity to make deals with the government, because take into account the experience of Brazil, I feel myself this currency economies need some kind of support or of local governments and even national governments.
What kind of support would you like to see?
Very simple. They should give support as the Brazilian government gave. For instance, how to launch a community bank with double currency. A community bank that can lend you money in official currency, and you can pay part of it in social currency. This leads you to need social currency. Then you need to know how it operates. And this is the condition why it worked in Brazil, And I think that we have a good launching this last year, the last months. I think the WABA network and Moneda Par are working pretty well. And I have a lot of hope that this is going to survive any change of government next year, because we have elections this year.
Let me ask a further question. Aside from government support, many people, including some mainstream economists, are predicting some further problems with the economy worldwide. A recession similar to the one we experienced in 2008. If that were to occur, how do you see that affecting the social money movement in Argentina?
Well, I think the social money movement should be run as in Brazil, with autonomy, which is it was what we called co-management. You don't intervene here. You don't intervene in our rules of the game. This is the importance of Banco Palmas at the national level. Because, for instance, right now, I don't say that Banco Palmas is better than it was during the government of the Labour Party, but it didn't disappear. In Argentina, when the government disappeared and was supporting social currency movement in the places, in some villages, everything disappears because people do not understand that it's based in their work. So right now, there are many initiatives with Moneda Par trying to work with local governments and recycling garbage, with small and medium enterprise, and working with tokens quite similar to this. And for instance, if you go to, if you have your cryptocurrency wallet with your production sold in one node in Argentina right now, you can go with this cryptocurrency, because it's secure, high security, to buy in another place. So, I mean, we have to redesign the project, but we are still in the first steps. And I am very engaged in theoretical approach that enlarges the market to a larger market than social solidarity economy.
Well, I've always maintained that the key issue in any currency system is the way you allocate it to producers. And those that are capable of producing more should get a greater line of credit. That's the way to assure that the credits will maintain their value.
Yeah, you're sure. That's for sure. But let me recognize you. I mean, they have been working for 2 years in this project, okay, since 1926. I met them in middle 2017, and 28 we launched, and we came to a couple of agreements with universities and NGOs, etc. So
that was
I
2018.
just used the phrase that maybe you can understand it. I just propose, if you think that the market is larger and broader than the political party I'm in, if you think it's a political party project, I'm out.
Of course.
And it's clear. It's clear that it's a very important. We have an opportunity. We don't know how far we can move, but we are going to do this. Take into account many initiatives that are currently running in Portugal, Spain, Brazil. You know, these are the most important ones.
Heloisa, I have one general question more on your background, Heloisa.
Yes,
I did
please.
not know prior to this conversation that you had a background in, I think you said, molecular biology. Could you talk a little bit about what your original goals were professionally?
Yes, well, I studied in Brazil. Had my career, my how do you call this? My bachelor degree in biology, natural history, as a matter of fact. And then I came to France to make a PhD in viruses, genetics of virus, and molecular biology. This was my first training during the last around 68. My first article was published about viruses. So after this, I got married and I went to live in Argentina. And in Argentina, I turned to neurophysiology until the day I understood that I wanted definitely to be in the social sciences. So I did a hard, because it's, in Latin America, it's not normal that you turn from biology to social sciences. So I had to find a way to do this bias. And I made a master degree studying the phenomenon of Peronism in Argentina. That was the movement launched by President Juan Domingo Perón in the 40s.
So was your motivation political from the beginning?
From the very beginning, which was my general issue on life, because even if I was working in scientific research, very, very high level biology, molecular biology, and all this, very far away from common people interests. My real issue was inequality, okay? Social justice has always been a sort of guideline in my life, and it comes from my father. That was a doctor working mainly for poor people, from whom he used to get chicken or marmalade when they had not money to pay their consultation. And that I think that's why barter came into my memory, my old memory, So when I found this idea, I immediately understood that it was a barter network in Argentina were a way for, struggle against inequalities. And I'm still there. Right now, of course, my great concern is climate change and transition initiatives, but I still consider that social money is an excellent instrument. Necessary, but not enough, but absolutely necessary to fight inequality.
Well, we certainly agree on that, Heloisa. Social justice has been a major motivating force in my life for the last 40 years as well. I'm quite convinced that without alternative exchange mechanisms, we're not going to make any headway on climate change or pollution or any of the other dimensions of the global mega crisis. So I want to thank you very much for sitting down with us today and discussing these issues. And I wish you well and wish you success in your further efforts.
Okay, we'll be in contact. Don't doubt it. Okay.
Very well. Thank you again.